Ready?
Yes, we're going.
Okay. Let's give a little background of where we are, because we did some traveling today. We started out the day in Beersheba, which is here, the green dot. And you can see that Beersheba is in the Negev desert south of the mountain range of Judea and Samaria. And then we went south of Beersheba to the area of Shifta, which is over here off the map basically. Then we went back north past through Beersheba and we ascended the mountain range here of the southern Hebron mountains. So in general you have a range of mountains that runs through the center of the land of Israel called Judea and Samaria. Everything south of Jerusalem is basically called Judea. Everything north of Jerusalem is called Samaria. And to the east of the Judean mountains you have the desert that's called the Judean desert. And we just visited the Isvei Kedem factory in Carmel, which sits on the eastern side of this ridge, looking down over the Judean desert towards the Dead Sea. So basically, the mountain ends at Hebron, and then it splits off into two fingers. One finger that's a little bit more westward, and one a little bit more eastward. If someone is traveling, let's say from Jerusalem to Hebron, they travel from Jerusalem past Bethlehem along the spine of the mountain. Once they hit Hebron, they can decide whether to turn right or left. If they would turn right, they'll come down off the mountain near Beersheba. If they turn left, they'll come down the mountain near Arad, which is not showed on the map, but Arad is here. So Beersheba and Arad both are cities in the Negev desert at the foot of the mountain, but two different fingers of the mountain. So we're standing now at Ziph, which is just a little bit north of Susia, right about here, and we're facing east, looking out over the Judean desert towards the Dead Sea. Because there's Sharav today, the visibility is very poor. On a clear day, you could even see towards the mountains of Moab and Ammon in the distance. But we got stuck with a very hazy day because of the Sharav weather pattern that we have here today that's making it quite hot also. We're standing on an archaeological site. We drove up to the top of this hill, and the army has a lookout tower here because topographically this is a very good point to see the surrounding area. We're not quite at the top because it's a little bit difficult to get up there with the cane. From the top you get a little bit more of a 360 view, not much more, but a little bit more. And we're sitting on a site that's called Tel Ziph, the archaeological site of Ziph. That's what the Arabs call it till this day. And Ziph is a city that's mentioned in the Bible in several places. You can start with the book of Joshua. Let's open the Tanakh and take a look at a few of the quotations about Ziph. If we start with the book of Joshua in chapter 15, which is the chapter that lists all the cities that the people of Israel conquered when they entered the land of Israel, and all the cities that they inherited. In chapter 16, verse 55, or let's go back a verse to verse 54, it says that they conquered Humta, Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron, which is right near here, Tzior, 9 cities and their villages. Then the next verse 55, it says Maon, Carmel, Ziph, and in English it says Juta, but in Hebrew it's Yata. Okay, Maon, Carmel, Ziph, and Yuta, Jezreel, and it goes on with a list of other cities in the area. So
there's a Jezreel here.
There was a Jezreel here as well.
Right.
Jezreel means Israel. It means God will plant. So any place where there was a fertile valley could have gotten the name Israel.
Right.
Okay. Just like there was more than one Bethlehem and more than one Kadesh and more than one. There's certain names that got repeated according to every area. Let's say.
Yeah.
So we see that these cities are listed in one list: Maon, Carmel, Ziph, and Yuta. And we just visited we passed a modern city called Maon. We visited a factory in a modern city called Carmel. Utah, or the Arab village of Yatta, is just over this way, and we're standing on ancient Ziph. So you see right away the names in the area. I'll show you on a modern road map what we have in this area. What are the modern names of the Arab cities in this area today? Okay. Okay, the problem is that okay. So this is in Hebrew, but I'll point to you. We're standing here, Tel Ziph. This little triangle is Tel Ziph, the archaeological site of Ziph. The Arab town, which is off this way, is called Yatta. Then here you have an Arab town called Carmel. Carmel, not Carmel, Carmel. And you have over here an Arab town called Maon. Maon. So you have Carmel, Maon, Yatta, and Ziph. Just like the list in verse 55 of chapter 15 of Joshua of the cities that the children of Israel conquered, the Arab names till this day, Carmel, Maon, Yatta, and Ziph, are still the same names. So just politically speaking, when you hear the world saying that, let's say, Jews came here as foreigners and conquered Palestinian lands or Arab lands, it's actually quite the opposite. The Arabs, they're people from Arabia, speaking Arabic, sitting in cities with Hebrew names, and then claiming that we stole the land, which is quite ironic, just as a side note. Now let's go to some stories that happen in this area. One story that you have here it is. Ziphites betray David. Here we are. Okay, so the first story is in 1 Samuel chapter 23. We know that all throughout the stories of David and Saul, David was running away from King Saul. Ever since David killed Goliath and he became a member of Saul's family, he married Saul's daughter Michal. So he became a member of the royal family, and therefore, at least in theory, a kind of heir to the throne, a possible heir, if the sons of Saul wouldn't be a king, for example. And Saul started to see that when the royal entourage would go through the streets, everyone would chant out David's name instead of Saul's name. David was much more popular than Saul because they saw him as this hero that slayed the giant Goliath. Saul started to become paranoid that David will assassinate him, assassinate his children, and stage a coup and make himself king of Israel without any resistance, because after all, the people are with him anyway. So Saul started to pursue David all around the country, from one place to the next. And you have several chapters of the Bible which are taken up, many chapters just with David running away from Saul and his troops coming after him and running this place, running that way. David hid with the Philistines, he hid in the desert, he hid in all different places. At a certain point in chapter 23 of 1 Samuel, David came and hid here. This city Ziph was built by Mesha, the son of Caleb. Caleb, who, Caleb ben Jephunneh, it's in English, who was one of the spies who spied this area. When the people of Israel entered the land, he inherited the area around Hebron, south of Hebron, and his son Mesha built Ziph. It says in the book of Chronicles that his son Mesha built this city of Ziph. And so this, Caleb was from the tribe of Judah, and this is a city in the tribe of Judah. David is also from the tribe of Judah. Saul is from the tribe of Benjamin. So if David wants to hide in a city, most of the time he hid with the Philistines or in the wilderness. But if he wants to hide in a city, where is he going to hide? So number one, he's going to choose a city in his own tribe that maybe there's some loyalty, maybe they won't give him away. And second of all, he's not going to take a city up at the top of the mountain where the population is large. He's going to take a small city on the edge of the desert where there's not so many people, where he can probably shake hands with everybody, look them in the eye, and make sure they're going to not give him away. And also where if he does get found out, he can run out to the desert, go hide in the caves, and get away very quickly. So due east from here is En Gedi. En Gedi is due east from here. If you follow the valley out towards the Dead Sea, you end up at En Gedi. So what does David do? He hides in Ziph. And eventually the people of Ziph gave him away. They sent word to Saul. You have, for example, in Psalms chapter 54, it says, when the people of Ziph came to Saul and told him, Halo David mistater imanu, David is hiding with us. So there it just hints to it, the prayer that David said to God when his own people of Ziph gave him away. But here in chapter 23, in verse 14, it says, David then dwelled in the wilderness in strongholds, or he dwelt in the mountain in the wilderness of Ziph. Saul searched for him all of the days, but God did not deliver him into his hand. David saw that Saul had gone forth to seek his life, and David was in the wilderness of Ziph in the forest. Now, pay attention, in the forest. There's no forest here anymore. It's all deforested. But in ancient times, all the mountaintop was forested. Jonathan, son of Saul, arose and went to see David in the forest, and he encouraged him with the word of God. He said to him, Fear not, for the hand of my father Saul will not find you. You will reign over Israel, and I will be second to you, and even my father Saul knows it. The two of them sealed a covenant before God. David stayed on in the forest, and Jonathan went to his home. Some Ziphites went up to Saul in Givah, saying, David is hiding among us in the strongholds in the forest of the Hachilah hill, south of Yeshimon. So now, however your soul desires to come down, O king, come down, and we undertake to give him over into the hand of the king. Saul said, Blessed are you unto God, for you have shown me compassion. And so Saul came to Ziph. They arose, they went to Ziph ahead of Saul. David and his men were in the wilderness of Maon, in the Arava, the desert south of the Yeshimon. So in other words, it mentions here in the story Ziph, Maon, the wilderness around here. And this is when we have the story that we tell at En Gedi, that Saul came after David with thousands of troops. David fled out to the desert towards En Gedi because there's an oasis there, and he hid in the cave in En Gedi, and that's when Saul came with thousands of troops down through the desert chasing David. And that's when Saul walked into the cave to relieve himself and didn't see that David and his men are sitting in the back of the cave, and David cut the corner of his cloak, proving to Saul that he had the ability to assassinate him if he wanted to. He got his knife right up to him without him realizing. He could have just as easy have plunged it in his back, but Instead, he chose to cut off the corner of his garment. And that's when Saul finally acknowledged that David doesn't actually want to assassinate him. So the story that we talk about at En Gedi of David and Saul, it starts here at Ziph, and then Saul pursues David down through the desert towards En Gedi, which is due east of here. So that's one story that happens in this area. The next story is a couple of chapters later. After David comes back to this area, we have in chapter 25 of 1 Samuel. It's interesting because the traditional, let's say, translation of the Bible cuts the chapter in an awkward place. So actually the story begins in verse 2 of the chapter, when really the chapter probably should have been cut there if you're going to give chapter numbers. So verse 2 of chapter 25, it says, "There was a man in Maon whose business was in Carmel." So just on the other side of this hilltop, we have Maon, and Carmel, and we're at Ziph, okay? There was a man in Maon whose business was in Carmel. The man was very wealthy. He owned 3,000 sheep. Now we saw some shepherds on the way here, and there's actually wool stuck on this tree here from the last shepherd who came through here with his sheep, and the wool got snagged on the olive tree here. There was a man in Maon whose business was in Carmel. The man was very wealthy. He owned 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. The following once happened at the shearing of his sheep in Carmel. This means that the man lived in Maon, but the shearing of the sheep took place in Carmel. Because in Carmel, there's an ancient pool there with a spring that waters it, and you need a lot of water when you do the shearing of sheep. And till this day, the Arab shepherds who live in Maon go to the pool in Carmel to do the shearing of the sheep. It's still done that way because that's a good place to do it. There's a tradition here. Everyone from the area goes to Carmel to do the shearing of the sheep. So the man's name was Nabal, or Naval in Hebrew. They spell it with a B in English. And his wife's name was Abigail. The woman was intelligent and beautiful. It's a very unusual description of a woman in Tanakh. Every time a woman is described in Tanakh, she's described as Yafat Toar, Yafat Mareh, beautiful of form, beautiful of look. Here the Bible describes her as intelligent and beautiful, okay, which is very unusual. I don't think there's any other woman. There is the wise woman from Tekoa, but you very rarely have that description of a woman in the Tanakh. That it calls her. The term in Hebrew is Shem Ishto Abigail. His wife says Abigail. V'isha Tovat Sechel. It uses the same term, Tovat Mareh. Usually it says Tovat Mareh, of good appearance. And here it says instead Tovat Sechel, of good intellect. It like uses, you expect it. The second it says Va'isha Tovat. Anyone who reads the Bible expects the next word to be Mareh or Toar, to be look. And it surprises you. It says Tovat Sechel. She was good of intellect, which is, that term doesn't appear anywhere else in Tanakh that I can think of. V'yafat Toar, she was also beautiful. And the man was hard and difficult. He was a descendant of Caleb. Okay, he lived in this area because this is the area where Caleb inherited. David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep. So David sent 10 attendants, and David said to the attendants, "Go up to Carmel and approach Nabal, inquiring after his welfare in my name, and say, such success for life," in Hebrew, kol lechai. "Peace be upon you, peace be upon your household, peace be upon all that is yours. And now, I have heard that they are shearing for you. Now your shepherds have stayed with us, and we did not shame them, and they did not lack anything all the days they were in Carmel. Ask your attendants, and they will tell you. Therefore, let my attendants find favor in your eyes, for we have come because of your celebration. Please give whatever you can to your servants and to your son, to David." So basically what is David sending message to Nabal. He's basically saying, your shepherds are out in the wilderness where they can be attacked by all kinds of bad people. And my men are also in the wilderness hiding from Shaul. And not only have we not attacked them or raided them, but we've protected them from other bandits in the area. And they've only had good from us. Hold on, I just want to see what's going on over here.
This is the shepherd and his sheep, right?
Yeah. As long as if it's the army.
Oh, there's a whole herd coming through here.
There's a whole lot.
Nice, there's a whole herd of sheep coming through here.
Okay.
Okay?
That's the ones who passed the road.
Yeah.
I think it was the
They'd be Arabs or Jewish or?
Huh?
They'd be Arabs.
It's an Arab sheep herder. He's coming through with his herd.
Okay.
So anyways, he says that your shepherds have come through here, and how appropriate a shepherd's coming through here now, right? Alan. He says that your shepherds have come through here, and we haven't done them any problems. We've been very nice to them. And now you're harvesting the wool at the end of the season. This is the time when you harvest. You have a lot of abundance. So please take care of us now. Give us some food. Let us celebrate with your shepherds and eat something while we're here. So he says to them like this, therefore, let my attendants find favor in your eyes, for we have come because of your celebration. Please give whatever you can to your servants and to your son, to David. David's attendants came and spoke in accordance with all these words to Nabal in David's name, and then rested. Nabal replied to David's servants and said, who is David and who is the son of Yishai of Jesse? In other words, Nabal said, I don't owe you anything. I don't know you. It's not my problem that your people have been protected. I didn't ask them to protect my people. I don't know you. I don't know your father. These days, the rebellious servants have increased. He's basically saying, what insolence that you're asking me to give you anything? Like, what did you do for me? Each against his master. Should I take from my bread and my water and my meat that I have slaughtered from my shears and give them to men about whose origin I do not know? David's attendants turned around to their way, and they went back and arrived and reported to him in accordance with all these words. David said to his men, each man gird his sword. Each man girded his sword. And David too girded his sword. About 400 men went after David, and 200 others stayed with the belongings. Basically, David said, if that's the response, we're going to go take revenge on him. One young man from the attendants told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, behold, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, and he drove them off. These men were very good to us. We were not shamed, nor were we lacking anything all the days that we traveled with them. When we were in the field, they were a protective wall over us, both by day and by night, all the days that we were with them tending the sheep. And now be aware and determine what to do, for the evil decree has been made final against our master and against his entire household, and he himself is too base a person even to talk to. He can't be reasoned with. David is going to come and take his revenge, and if you don't find some way to deal with this, we don't have any way to convince him to change his mind. So Abigail hurried and took 200 breads, 200 containers of wine, 5 cooked sheep, 5 measures of toasted grain, and 100 raisin clusters, and 200 cakes of pressed figs, and she put them on the donkeys. She said to her attendants, go on ahead of me, behold, I am coming behind you. But she did not tell Nabal, her husband. Then it happened, as she was riding on the donkey, clandestinely descending the mountain, behold, David and his men were descending the other mountain towards her, and she met them. Now David had said, it was for naught that I guarded all of the man's possessions in the desert, and there was not missing anything from all that belonged to him, yet he has repaid my kindness with evil. Such shall he do further if I leave over until morning all that belongs to him so much as a dog. In other words, David had already made up his mind to kill all of Nabal's household. When Abigail saw David, she hurried and dismounted from the donkey and fell on her face before David and bowed down to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, with me, myself, my Lord, lies the sin. Let your maidservant please speak in your ears and hear out the words of your maidservant. Let my Lord not set his heart against this base man, against Nabal, for he is as his name implies. The word Nabal in Hebrew, nevela, is like a piece of dead meat that you find in the field. It's called a nevela. Like if you find an animal died in the field and it wasn't slaughtered and butchered properly, you feed it to the dogs, it's called nevela. So Nabal, it's from the same root as nevela. So she says, don't listen to what my husband says, basically. His name is Nabal, and that's what he is. He's like a nevela. He's like a carcass or something. Okay? And your maidservant did not see my Lord's attendants whom you sent. If I had realized that they came, I would have given them what they asked for. Now, my Lord, as God lives, and by your life, as God has prevented you from coming to bloodshed, and from your own hand avenging you, may all your enemies and all those who wish evil upon my Lord be like Nabal. And now, this homage that your maidservant has brought to my Lord, let it be given to the attendants who are traveling with my Lord. Please forgive the sin of your maidservant, for God shall certainly make for my Lord an enduring house, for my Lord fights the wars of God, and no blame has been found in you all your days. A man has risen up to pursue you and to seek your life. May my Lord's soul be bound up in the bond of life with God, with the Lord your God, and may he hurl away the soul of your enemies as one shoots a stone from a slingshot. And may it be that when God performs for my Lord all of the beneficence of which he has spoken regarding you, and appoints you as leader over Israel, that this not be for you as a stumbling block and a moral hindrance for my Lord. In other words, he's saying, if you will do this act, and you will go ahead and kill my husband and all of his men, when you become king, it will be a stain on your record that you killed people when they were willing to give you what you want. So David then said to Abigail, blessed be the Lord God of Israel who sent you to meet this day, and blessed is your advice, and blessed are you who have restrained me from coming to bloodshed and avenging myself by my own hand. Truly, as the Lord God of Israel lives, who has prevented me from harming you, had you not hurried and come to meet me by morning's light, there would not have remained to Nabal as much as a dog. David then accepted from her what she had brought to him. He said to her, go up in peace to your house. See, I have heeded your advice, and I shall now show you grace. And so the story continues, and I'm sure you've read it before, and you can read it again when you get back home. But eventually, in a few more, another paragraph later, Nabal dies of natural causes shortly after this incident. And David was so charmed by this woman that he sends a messenger saying, I want to marry you, and she accepts. And she accepts to marry David, and she becomes one of the wives of King David. So that happened here. Maon, Carmel, Ziph is kind of overlooking both of them. This is where David was hiding just 2 chapters before in chapter 23. This is chapter 25, this story. So all of these stories of this time in David's life, while he was hiding from Saul in the wilderness around Ziph, around Maon, around Carmel, it happens here. Now this site has never been excavated by archaeologists. It's an untouched site. This looks like some kind of a hewn stone, but I don't know. But there's a lot of hewn stones here. There's a wall here. There's an ancient wall along this part of the site. This is not an ancient wall. This is a more modern wall for this orchard that's here, with almond tree behind you and olive trees and fig trees in this area. And one day this will be excavated and they will find the city of Ziph from the biblical times, from the time of the first temple and even the time of the judges, God willing. But they've done archaeological surveys here. They found pottery here from the Iron Age, which is the time of the judges up until the Bronze and Iron Age. The Bronze Age is roughly the time of the judges. The Iron Age is the time of the kings of Israel, roughly starting from Saul, David,